Good morning, honorable members. I think it's almost 5 minutes past 10, and I therefore wish that we should start with the meeting. Let me take this opportunity, honorable members, to first and foremost welcome you in this meeting of the Select Committee on Public Enterprises and Communications, and also welcome the Honorable Minister of Public Enterprises, the Honorable Pravin Gordhan.
Recording in progress.
Together with his team from the ministry and the department, respectively. We welcome the staff members of Parliament. This meeting is specifically convened to get a progress report from the department on the matters that are related to the performance of the department and a whole range of other issues that we ought to be brought into speed in terms of the progress that is being made with all the challenges that the department is confronted with, and also to hear some successes and achievements at the same time. And I therefore wish to say this meeting is now duly opened, and I will now check with the Secretariat the apologies that we might have received. Amanda, can you please give us apologies?
Thank you, Chair. I have received 3 apologies. One from Honorable Nyambi, Honorable Makwala, as well as I forgot the third one. I'm going to come back now, Chair, because Honorable Mutisa is on the platform and I had received her apology. Honorable, yes, thank you, Chair. Honorable Nana, Honorable Makwala, and Honorable Nyambi. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. No,
Good morning.
Thank you. Is there any additional apology?
Yes, Chair.
Yes,
this is
Linda.
I'm forwarding an apology for Honorable Ngwenya. She's out of the country.
Okay, and there's no network where she is?
No, there isn't.
All right. I think then that those are the apologies that are recorded. And I hope that all those apologies were submitted in a written form so that they can be part of the record of the committee. Having said that, I wish now, without any further ado, invite the Honorable Minister of Public Enterprises, the Honorable Pravin Gordhan, to take us through the briefing and the presentation that they will be presenting to the committee for the consideration of the Select Committee. Honorable Minister, we appreciate your presence in this meeting, and we have a very good working relationship with your ministry and the department. We know that usually Wednesdays are difficult for you, and we know that you have to really go and do an extra mile in order to ensure that you make an appearance here, since Wednesday are normally cabinet days. So this is an expression of appreciation that if you are able to come, you come. When you are not able to come, you ensure that the Deputy Minister is here. And we worked so well. So I wish now to welcome you, Honourable Minister, to address the Select Committee as per the invitation that was shared with your good office. Welcome, Minister. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning to you and to other members of the Select Committee and members of the public and media that would have joined or might have joined this session. And thank you very much for this opportunity to share with you, in particular, matters arising from what we commonly call the Zondo Commission's recommendations. And of course, as you pointed out, you might have other questions for us to look at. What we have done is to prepare a presentation, particularly on the first issue, because the second is general in nature. And let me say that from the outset, the department and the ministry have been doing two things. One is to request each of the SOEs to put into place a plan of action which would give effect to the recommendations or findings of the Commission. And secondly, within the department itself, manage some of those processes as well. And there's a wide number and range of areas that the recommendations of the Commission and findings of the Commission have an impact on. And what we've done is to try to give you, as best we can, some insights into progress in this area. Let me point out at the same time that the entities that account to this ministry and department are just a few of the entities that were the targets of state capture. So there are many others within the state. But also, as we've pointed out repeatedly, but sometimes, as you know, memories are short in the public domain, state capture has had a devastating effect on many of the entities that we are referring to. If we look at SAA, it brought SAA by November 2019 to its knees, and SAA could have disappeared if government chose the liquidation option. Fortunately, it didn't. It went into, as a decision of the board of the SAA at that time, into a business rescue process. And today, although small, and with a smaller fleet, SAA is beginning to find its feet. And the transaction with a strategic equity partner is progressing, although very slowly due to some of the regulatory requirements. Similarly, in other areas, you'll find that the damage caused by state capture stretches across, firstly, areas of governance that will cover boards. It will cover the type of management that boards put in place, the kind of operational diligence that boards maintain in relation to the performance of the various entities. Secondly, it's the operations of entities, because good people were either chased out or left, and with it went many decades of experience as well. And that then thirdly impacts upon the revenue and the financial situation that these entities find themselves in. And we often refer to, inverted commas, bailouts, but the bailout happens partly as a result of the damage of state capture, the accumulated debts that some of the big entities have resorted to during the capture period, and of course the mismanagement of the entity over a period of time. The fourth area is the people area, if you like, and as I said, the discipline within many of these entities declines over a period of time, and the hemorrhaging in terms of skills also has an impact. The fifth area is the question of the marketplace or the business model with which each of the entities work with and within. And so you'll find that in the electricity marketplace, so to speak, there are very significant structural changes that are occurring. And these entities have to both recover from state capture on the one hand, but also reposition themselves to meet the requirements of the particular sector in which they work. So these are the general, if you like, that's the value chain of damage that has been caused by state capture. Recovery from state capture is not an instantaneous process, where originally we thought replacing a board, and you'll find that in the public domain as well, thinking that a replacement of 10 people, 10 new people, ipso facto, or that's Latin, but that by virtue of that change, everything else will be resolved, or by appointing 1 or 2 people at a senior level, that will give us the recovery path that the SOEs would follow. And given, as I said earlier, the extent of the damage, you'll find that that recovery path is not all that easy. And it takes time to push back the kind of damage that state capture did, but also to rebuild institutions, rebuild a culture of performance, rebuild a culture of accountability and responsibility and efficiency, which would enable these entities to compete in the various marketplaces that they operate within. And as we know from both load shedding and some other logistics issues, amongst many others, that if we don't get that right, it has an impact both on the economy of this country, but also on people's lives as well, and livelihoods. So the project of recovery, if you like, is one that is tortuous, one that is full of potholes, if you like, as we take that road to recovery. And it's hard work, both within the institution and outside of that institution as well. So, Chair, you give us an important opportunity to explain what are some of the measures that have been taken and are being taken. But the measures don't fall entirely within the powers and scope of SOEs or the department or ministry only. There are other agencies, particularly the law enforcement agencies, that need to come to the party as well. And unless we see serious prosecutions taking place on the basis of what clearly was malfeasance at a particular point in time, which probably resulted in the loss of billions of rands in one form or another, the risk of consequences is certainly not there to the full extent. And so mischief, if you like, is encouraged because at the moment, our law enforcement entities are not making, in my view, the kind of impact and progress that they need to be making in order to mark their presence and their ability to act against corruption and fraudulent behavior, whether it's in the past or whether it's operating currently. My last point there is to remember that in each of these instances that the Commission reports on, there was both the corrupter and the corruptee. So there were people within the institutions, but there were also very big international companies, amongst others, that were involved, some of which have paid for their bad deeds and deals that they made at the time. And there are others who must still account for the kind of role that they played, whether they are South African companies or global entities. And some of them have been in the news as well. So with that background, Chair, I'm going to ask Advocate Kobe from the department, who's the Deputy DG, to take you very quickly through our presentation, and then we'll be available both for questions on what we present and any other matter that you wish to raise. So thank you very much. And with your permission, may I invite Advocate Makobe to make the presentation.
Thank you very much, Minister, and good morning to the chairperson of the Select Committee and the honorable members of the Select Committee. I'll be making a presentation on the department's implementation plan of the key recommendations as contained in the State Capture Commission report. I'll firstly look at the background and then look at the initiatives of the department on the recommendations of the State Capture Commission report. I'll then move on to the progress on the specific recommendations that were made by the State Capture report relating to the department. And I'll then end with the progress report per state-owned companies that report to the department. The department has really been working, as the minister has said, this is a collaborative approach. We have been working with the law enforcement agencies. We have worked with the state-owned companies within the portfolio of the department and other organs of state to really look at 5 issues. The first issue is to pursue the delinquency proceedings against the former directors of the state-owned companies that are implicated in state capture. Actually, these delinquency proceedings started even before the State Capture Commission report, but I'll give details in terms of the progress of where we are with these proceedings. This is actually led by the department. The department and the SOEs, together with other law enforcement agencies, are also ensuring that civil and criminal proceedings are referred to the relevant authorities for investigation so that there is prosecution where necessary and there is recovery in terms of the civil suits. I'll give progress as well in terms of the details thereof. But also, we have been referring some of these directors to their various professional bodies, especially where the individuals have failed to exercise their fiduciary responsibilities. I'll give details on that a bit later in the presentations. But also, as a department, we have actually, in an innovative way, said that we need to identify individuals that are implicated in state capture, flag them so that they are prevented from accessing employment opportunities in other spheres of government, because we have seen that an individual will move from one entity and move to another entity, and that individual is implicated in state capture. So we have actually proposed a database of those individuals that are implicated. The report also talks about the reforms in terms of the maintenance of good governance in state-owned companies. We have drafted and we had published the National State Enterprises Bill for public comments, and that bill really deals with the issue of good governance within the state-owned companies. As we had indicated earlier, on matters that are led by the law enforcement agencies, the state-owned companies have actually registered criminal cases with the police to address the recommendations that are criminal in nature. But progress on these recommendations are presented to Parliament by the relevant law enforcement authorities, because they are in charge of that process, and we need to ensure that there is accurate and consistent report and tracking of those. So that is handled by the different law enforcement agencies, and the reports thereof are given by those agencies. However, the department is part of the steering committees of the Director Generals and the heads of the law enforcement authorities, and those really oversee that all the stakeholders play their roles in implementing the recommendations of the State Capture Commission. So this is really to ensure that there is a coordinated approach within government in dealing with the recommendations of the State Capture Commission reports. As I had indicated, civil suits are being opened by the law enforcement agencies, and obviously they are in partnership with the state-owned companies, and the department also support these proceedings to ensure that there is a collaborative approach in both the criminal and the civil suits. As I indicated, delinquency proceedings are being instituted, and then we are referring certain individuals, or we have referred them to the various professional bodies. If we move right along, I'm going to be now looking at the initiatives of the department in implementing the State Capture Commission report. We have been consulting with professional bodies like the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, the Legal Practice Council, the Independent Regulatory Board for Auditors, to really form a work stream to support the delinquency proceedings that the department is leading. There's also work with the DPES, with the SIU. We are actually ensuring that the proclamations are amended to ensure that the recommendations in the state capture report are fully covered in the proclamations, because there have been proclamations previously, but we amend them as time goes on to ensure that some of the recommendations are captured in those proclamations. We have a whistleblowing hotline, and we receive some whistleblowing reports. And as part of that process, we're looking at the modus operandi. We are looking at the patterns of collusive behavior, so that where necessary, then we can then amend the SIU proclamations to ensure that those collusive behavior or trends that are coming out of there are investigated. So we have been proactive in that regard. We, as I indicated earlier, we are also finalizing a database of individuals who are implicated, so that they don't move to other spheres of government. We are also collaborating with the Department of Public Service and Administration to actually extend the financial disclosure capability of government to the SOEs. And really, this initiative will result in savings, annual savings, for example, in Transnet of 50 million and 10 million for Eskom. So we're really making sure that the financial disclosure issues are addressed in the SOEs. And we're actually looking at developing a conceptual framework to make sure that there is artificial intelligence capability in the integrity assessment of the employees and directors of the state-owned companies. This is to really to ensure that state captures that does not occur again. Now, moving along to slide number 6, as I indicated, the department is leading the process of actually approaching the court to declare certain implicated directors as delinquent directors. We are working with the law enforcement agencies to pursue 25 cases of delinquency proceedings against 92 former directors of state-owned companies. And the breakdown is as follows: Eskom is 18 cases, Transnet is 25 cases, SAA is 25 cases as well, Dinel is 10 cases, and Alesco is 22 cases. Now, with regard to the progress thereof in Eskom, the department is on the launch of the delinquency proceedings. We have launched against 4 former directors of Eskom on 30 April 2023, and those cases are under investigation by the CIPC. So once the CIPC concludes the investigation, then they will approach the court, because this is a process that needs to be taken to court, and the court must make that declaration of directors as delinquent directors. We have prepared 56 evidence submissions that we have referred to the CIPC on the 13th of November 2023, so that the CIPC can initiate complaints against 60 former directors of Transnet, Dinel, and Alesco. So there's a lot of evidence, because you need evidence to be able to approach the court. So we are really cooperating with the CIPC and providing them with the necessary evidence that they need to be able to approach the courts. And by the end of this month, we are on track to deliver the remaining 35 evidence submissions to the CIPC, so that then we can approach the court and ensure that these directors are declared delinquent directors. Now, as I indicated earlier, that they are a referral to professional bodies. The department referred 6 cases of former board members to accounting and law firms, to the different professional bodies. And the breakdown is as follows: SAA is 4 cases, Dinel is 1 case, and Transnet is 1 case. Now, with regard to SAA, a complaint which was laid with the SAICA resulted in one former director being fined 6.1 million and barred from practicing as a chartered accountant. So you can see that when we refer these cases to the professional bodies, there are actions that have been taken against the implicated individuals. A complaint was laid again with IRBA, which resulted in a director of an audit firm being fined 5.1 million and also being barred from practicing as an auditor because of the incorrect audit opinion in respect of the ESCOM's 2016 audit. So the auditors are really not spared as well. We are referring them to their professional body to make sure that where they have erred or they've been collusive in terms of state capture, that action is taken against them and they are barred from practicing as auditors. So we are continuing to review the profiles of the implicated former directors to ensure that those who belong to professional bodies are identified, and we refer those cases to professional bodies so that they can be disciplined and barred from practicing. One of the recommendations of the State Capture Commission report was that there must be an establishment of a body which will be tasked with the identification, recruitment, and selection of the right kind of people to the boards of the SOEs, and also those that are CEOs and CFOs. As I indicate, the department has drafted and published for public comments the National State Enterprises Bill, and the bill really codifies a board appointment process that embodies the principles of transparency, equity, and fairness. And you'll see when the revised bill comes out that there will be a transparent process for the appointment of the boards, and there will be a panel that will be established, for example, for the appointment of the board of the holding company, that will be established through that process. Obviously, the bill will find itself in Parliament once the processes within government has been completed. Now, on the issue of the vetting and integrity assessment, I've spoken about the database of those individuals that have been implicated in state capture. And 25 former senior executives of ESCOM have been identified, and they are ready to be included in that database. And we continue to identify individuals in other state-owned enterprises so that they are part of that database, and we can ensure that they don't resurface somewhere in the state machinery or in the SOEs. One of the recommendations of the State Capture Commission report was that there must be establishment of an appointment and oversight committee for the appointment of the CEOs and the CFOs of the state-owned companies. You'll see from the revised National State Enterprises Bill that the boards actually of the state-owned enterprises will be responsible for the appointment of the CEOs and the CFOs, which is really in line with the prescripts of the Companies Act. Then these issues also relate to the National State Enterprises Bill, which I indicated has been drafted, is going through government processes, and will be then into or submitted to Parliament in the near future. So going to the specific entities starting with ESCOM, in terms of the progress report with regard to the state capture report recommendations, SIEU launched investigations into 14 coal transport service providers concerning payments from 1st January 2010 to 31 January 2021. 5 employees were suspended, and 1 resigned during the interview with the investigation team, and 1 resigned prior to commencement of the investigation. Now, I think, and the SIU has actually been on record saying those that have resigned, actually, civil suits will be pursued against them so that they are not left off the hook by the fact of by the fact that they have resigned from the entity. There are 15 criminal cases that have been investigated in relation to coal transport contracts. There are 4 diesel suppliers that are implicated in potential wrongdoing, and those that are under investigation. And SIU has referred 5,620 matters to ESCOM for institution of disciplinary proceedings. So that is the background, the breakdown. I will not go into the detail in terms of that breakdown. So there are contracts amounting to 14.7 billion that were subject to state capture in Eskom. 4.8 billion is being claimed against former contractors and the former directors of Eskom. Eskom and the SIU successfully recovered 2 billion unlawfully paid to contractors. And Eskom has also opened 11 criminal cases for investigation by law enforcement agencies. In actual fact, all the SOEs, their memorandum of incorporation provided what was called the board tender committees. So which meant that the board were involved in operational procurement. But from 2019, when the minister came to the department, the board tender committees were done away with, so that we prevent state capture, because state capture really entered the SOEs through the compromise board, and both also been responsible for operational procurement. So we have cleared that defect and made sure in terms of the MOIs that the boards are not involved in any operational procurement, and that the board tender committees are abolished in the state-owned enterprises. With regard to the coal supply agreements and the bill contracts which were cancelled by Eskom as a result of SIU investigation, the total is 11 billion. Contract declared invalid by the courts is 3.7 billion. So this is just the summary of the litigation. Now, with regard to Transnet, if you can move to Transnet, the total value of contracts that were subject to state capture identified by the Commission amounted to 41.2 billion, and Transnet successfully recovered 744 million from the 1064 locomotive contracts and 1.1 billion concerning crane contracts. Transnet also opened criminal cases, the 12 of them, that are investigated by law enforcement agencies. And the value of the contracts under investigations amount to 57 billion, and the value of successful civil recovery amounts to 72 million. And the Transnet and the SIU, as I indicated, this is a collaborative approach with the SIU working with the SOCs, are progressing with litigation to review and set aside the 1064 locomotive contract, the CCTV camera contracts, and the crane contracts. If we then move along to SAA, the value of the contracts that were subject to state capture amount to 1.8 billion. 10 criminal cases have been opened with law enforcement agencies. And you can see per SOEs, we indicate what are the civil suits, what are the criminal cases that have been opened. And the SIU are also launching the civil suits in SAA, 1 billion relating to corruption between the board members, employees, and third parties. The recovery of 14 million emanating from the disposal of the ground processing units. And also the motion papers are filed at a special tribunal to set aside contract and recover 85 million pertaining to leasing of aircrafts. And as well in SAA, the MOI was revised to ensure that the board is not involved in board tender committees. With regard to denial, there has been SIU proclamations, and the investigations are continuing by the SIU. And as I indicated earlier, one former director implicated in state capture has been referred to the Legal Practice Council to prevent them from practicing as a lawyer. So all the recommendations of the criminal nature are under investigation by the law enforcement agencies. The same with Alesco. The state capture report is being analyzed and cases have been referred to law enforcement agencies, but the SIU is busy with investigations for both Dinel and Alesco. And once those have been concluded, then we will give a report in terms of where the criminal and the civil suits are. That is the end of the presentation. Thank you, Minister, and thank you to the chairperson and the honorable members of the Select Committee.
No, thank you, Honorable Minister. I guess that presentation include the summation of everything that you would have wanted to say. so we can proceed to engage with the presentation. Honorable members, that is the long and short of it. I will check on the platform if we have members who would like to ask questions of clarity and make comments. Because the presentation is quite clear and to the point. Members, this is now your opportunity to raise your hand. I see the hand of the Honorable Lindy with FDP. Do we have any other member? Honorable BB, let me give you the first bite, whilst other members are still trying to apply themselves. Over to you, Honorable BB.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairperson. On my part, I don't have any questions because the presentation is clear, and I would say thanks to the Minister. Greetings to you, Babu Kotan, my homeboy. I haven't seen for quite some time. I know you're very busy, but I'm so glad that you've come today, especially to outline this Zondo Commission, sort of, some of them are allegations and some of them, you know, and also with the presentation itself, Chairperson, I mean, it is outlined clear that there are strides that are taken for people who are involved into corruption. And also, I could see that they do recoup some monies out of it. And also, I could see that they freezed some of the banks for people who are part of this corruption. So for me, Chairperson, it is just a comment and also to say thank you. At least now we are clear, whereby when a person asks you regarding, I mean, about some of the entities, now, I mean, it's clear that, I mean, we can convey a good message to them. Chairperson, as I've mentioned, that I don't have any question. It was just a comment because the presentation is clear, and I mean you have got a tense presentation whereby really one understands what is going on within the entities. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Siyabonga, Umupibi. Let me just check if we do have any other hand. It seems that it's been a long year. Members are tired of engaging. Honorable Minister, we seem not to have members who want to engage further, but I would like just to again appreciate this presentation. And I do want to ask maybe one or two questions. One of the areas that was identified as vulnerable across the SOEs during the state capture inquiry is the procurement unit. Transnet, in our last engagement, indicated that they were training their personnel to become specialists in procurement. Is this training something that will happen across all the SOEs, or it will just be limited to Transnet? That's the first question. On the second question, on the remuneration of the executive directors and appointment of board members, does the department have policy guidelines that apply across SOEs so as to ensure that the caliber of people appointed have the relevant requisite skills to steer these SOEs on a sustainable path? Having said that, those two questions, Minister, I also want to add something to this effect. As you know, that the complexion of our country is that there are several provinces which are predominantly rural, and it's the majority of the provinces in the country. One of the things that tend to happen is that the representativity in these boards sort of sometimes overlook that element. There are talented patriots who come from some of these provinces. So it would be great if, when they are constituted, that balance is actually taken into account, so that you don't just have only town fellows running these SOEs, because the SOEs, yes, they are government businesses or enterprises, but they also play that key developmental role in the country, as well as particularly the countryside, where a lot of infrastructure is needed. Coupled with that is the issue of transformation, so that we are not forever fixated into the Zondo issue without looking into the transformation that is actually required. So it's very important that at the same time we tackle the issues of transformation. The example is that we are told that in the ports where there are terminals for export of minerals, coal, and so on, Richards Bay in particular, is that transformation has been very slow there in terms of allocations for companies, particularly those that would be owned by people who come from previously disadvantaged background, that they must also enter that space. Is there any move to ensure that there is intention and intelligence to ensure that we open space for participation and therefore allocation for the companies to have a way of ensuring that they also participate at that level? And secondly, at Eskom, as you know, that they get coal in particular from vast areas of the Mpumalanga province, which is predominantly a rural province. How do we ensure that those communities where the coal comes from have a meaningful participation in terms of that supply, of that coal into Eskom? And how does Eskom open up the transformation trajectory and ensure the meaningful participation of those communities? Because I don't think it is something that can be looked at only from a point of view of the Department of Minerals and Energy. I think Eskom itself needs to have a way of ensuring that the communities where the coal, where it comes from, it actually gives, a very intentional indication to its suppliers that they must take the communities along in one way or the other, if I may put it that way. Those will be my comments, Minister, and we do appreciate this presentation a great deal, and we see the progress that has been made with the evidence that has been presented here. And you have pointed us clearly on the steps that you have taken on certain matters, and we acknowledge that and we recognize that as a very good step going forward. I think we will now hand over to you, Minister, and your team to deal with those two comments from Honorable BB as well as myself. Over to you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair. And firstly, thank you to my hometown colleague for her positive response to the report that we've presented to you. And I'm glad that this will help us to understand better the kind of work that is going on, difficult as it might be. On some of the issues, so thank you, Comrade BB, or Honorable BB, for your appreciation. Chair, on your side, procurement remains a vulnerable area, because depending on what you are procuring, that procurement takes place at various levels within an organization. So there are still, if you like, opportunities, because technology in many of the SOEs hasn't caught up with the practices that we know create problems, but on the other hand, lend efficiency as well. So on the big items, it's easier to track what is going on. On the smaller items, it's a lot more difficult. And so apart from training, I think introducing the right technology to be able to track every cent that is actually spent by an SOE is absolutely crucial as we go forward. Remember what I said earlier on as well, Chairperson, that there's always an insider and an outsider involved in these processes. And so one of the challenges is, whilst we can train and reorientate people within the organization and develop a new ethical culture amongst the 100,000 plus staff that work at, say, two of the major SOEs, society itself needs to also do its bit by making sure that that we change the kind of social culture and the business culture in South Africa. And this is where the legislature can play an important part by emphasizing its stance on corruption and malpractices within the procurement area. But also we need a generation of entrepreneurs who, in inverted commas, make money in an honest way. Because every cent extra that is spent in the procurement area or every rand that is spent that should not be spent because 20% or 15% or 10% is added on for somebody's pocket is a cost that these SOEs can barely afford. So let's call it work in progress, Chairperson. In all of the SOEs and the efforts to get boards of these entities to put in the right technology, the right surveillance over procurement, and to take action against people who engage in one or other kind of malfeasance is something that both the management and boards of these entities must undertake, and our job is to constantly remind them of that. On the question of remuneration of boards, there are guidelines and standards that have to be followed, and Mr. Advocate Makove can add to that if he wants to, but those are applied across the boards in our portfolio, but hopefully elsewhere as well. In terms of representativity of provinces, I take your point about provincial representation. We've got to balance that where it is appropriate against the skill set that is required. And what we're learning from the last few years of experience, Chairperson, is that people on boards must actually, by and large, understand the business of these SOEs, firstly. Secondly, they must be able to not only go through the formalities of board processes, but have the courage to stand up for the right things as well. And thirdly, add a professional dimension, whether it is in accounting, whether it's in technology, in engineering, etc. So sometimes you're right, we look at representativity more in the sense of representativity of skills, but as much as possible, we are open to people from other, let's say, non-Gauteng provinces as well. But this is something that we need to be mindful of as we go forward. But we cannot continue to make the mistake of appointing people to boards merely because they have a particular profile publicly, or they are somebody's friend, or whatever the case might be. In the serious commercial businesses, which is what the big SOEs are, we've got to have not only the right people on the boards, but the right people in management positions as well, with the right kind of ethical background, but also proficiency in the business that those entities are involved in. On the transformation question, if you take Richards Bay as an example, as you know, a few weeks ago, the president spent some time there, as did we. The major export of coal, some 40 to 50 million tons, takes place through the privately owned RBCT, Richards Bay Coal Terminal, where each of the companies that have participated in creating RBCT have an allocated share. So Transnet's terminal exports a relatively smaller amount, and depending on the technical capability of the equipment and the various equipment working, it could get up to 10 or 14 million tons. Whereas the total capacity, ideally, of the port as a whole is probably, as far as the rail quantity is concerned, somewhere between 70 and 90 million tons. But we are far short of that at this point in time. But in sum, what I'm saying is that the privately owned terminals controlled by RBCT is the major export provider as far as coal is concerned. So there has been some provisions made for smaller players to participate in RBCT, but I think it's a constant battle, and it's something that even Parliament could look at. But Transnet itself does try to compensate for that and give the smaller players as much opportunity as possible as well. Of course, as the coal price increases, as we saw over the last period globally, and when we went up to about $300 to $350 per ton, there was a huge emphasis on the export side, and of course the deficiencies in operational terms, but also equipment terms within Transnet had an impact on whether the quantities that businesses want to export and make money from, which is of course understandable, could actually be transported to Richards Bay. And that's where there was a deficit, if you like, in that particular regard. But that export drive also had consequences for the supply of coal, for example, to Eskom. And recently, through the National Energy Crisis Committee and its law enforcement work stream, you might have read in the media, some actions were taken where there were several so-called yards discovered and closed down where bad quality and good quality coal was mixed, and the better quality coal found its way out of the country, and the mixed bag, if you like, of coal found its way into Eskom, and then that, of course, causes damage to the equipment within Eskom itself. As far as community involvement and benefits is concerned, that's where the mining company is coming. And it is for them to ensure that not only do they make a profit from coal or any other commodity, but that they meaningfully invest in the communities that they operate in, both in terms of the workers that work in the mine, but also the communities that are linked to the mine, either through the workers or through other connectivities as a concern. So that is certainly an area where, when we talk about inclusive growth being a new model of growth that is required for countries like South Africa, where the benefits are shared on a mass level, as opposed to just a few members of the elite section of our population, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, if I had to be frank with you. And it can be done if the will is there from the owners of the mines. And some do make impactful contributions, so one can't deny that. And yet others can actually improve on that as well. Let me just check with Advocate Makhobe whether he wants to add anything, but that would be my response, Chair.
Minister, I think you've covered all the issues, but just to say on the issue of the procurement, is a matter that also arose from the State Capture Commission report. And I know that there is a public procurement bill that seeks to address the issue of procurement across government and the SOEs, but also to ensure that the role of the procurement officer is professionalized, like you will professionalize the chartered accountants and the auditors. And as the minister indicated, we've got remuneration guidelines that we are using with regard to the issue of the remuneration. Thank you very much, Minister.
So back to you, Chair. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Minister, as well as your officials. I think that you have given us quite a very elaborate response, which has covered all the questions that have been raised and to our satisfactory. Honorable Minister, once more, we are grateful as a committee, and we want to take this opportunity to register that this was our last meeting for 2023, but not the last for the current financial year. So I want to take this opportunity to wish you all the best during the festive season. May you go and enjoy your stay with your families till we meet again in the new year. And we also wish you a prosperous 2024, which will be a year which will be very busy for many reasons, because we have the 30th anniversary of the new South Africa, but we will also be approaching an election which seems to be going to be highly contested from a point of view of many political parties that have been registered. I think we are told that more than 600 political parties are registered, and the advent of the independent candidates is going to be a very interesting one. I said in some quarters that for the first time, we will not have a ballot paper, but a ballot book, because we anticipate a very long list of participants. So indeed, we wish you a beautiful holiday and a festive season. I will give you an opportunity, Minister, maybe if you want to say anything to us as a parting shot.
No, just to wish you and the members and others that are connected to this call everything of the best over the festive season. And what you've described as the ballot book is democracy in action. So it's good to see that our democracy is still working, that it's constantly evolving, and that in various ways, people have a voice in institutions like Parliament, as you know, which is quite important. So thank you for receiving us in a very positive light, and we wish you, Chair, and the members and other colleagues well over the festive season. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you so much. Goodbye. That brings us to the end, honorable members, the presentation by the Minister and his team. We will now allow them to leave the meeting and go back to their working stations, whilst we will remain behind to consider some internal matters in relation to the minutes and how we deal with that, and conclude the meeting after that. Honorable members, I am made to understand that given the fact that some of our members have traveled to COP28 to the UAE, this sort of makes us not to constitute the quorum for this meeting. And as such, we have a bundle of minutes flowing from previous meetings. I think we have about 4 minutes which have not been adopted. But there's nothing we can do, because we were hoping that we will form quorum at least in the last meeting. I don't think there is anything lost. The conclusion of the year 2023 does not mean that we have concluded our work for the current financial year. No, we have concluded our work as the 6th Parliament, and therefore this committee is still within its tenure to be able to tackle these minutes in the new year. I don't think there would be any reason to raise an alarm with the fact that we have this bundle of minutes. We'll tackle them in our first meeting in the new year. That being said, honorable members, from my side as the chair of the committee, I wish to take this opportunity now to devote my appreciation to you for having worked so hard during the year of 2023, making all your constructive inputs and productive engagements, very robust and progressive proposals with the departments that we were dealing with. We have now come to a point where we go usually during this period to interface with our families and to intercede with our ancestors. So I wish to express my deep felt gratitude to you, comrades, for holding your hands together and for working, diligently in the best interest of our people. And I think we have cushioned the departments and advised them appropriately over the year on how they need to deal with matters. And you can see the improvement in many respects, including the attendance of the executive in this committee. This is one of the difficult committees because it deals with one of the highly contested space of SOEs. And SOEs that are under enterprises and SOEs that are under the Department of Communications and Digital Technology. So I would say you have broken the leg in terms of how we have worked here. You have shown the tenacity and your will, your political will and commitment in processing matters. I therefore wish you a wonderful festive season and a prosperous new year, and we'll be looking forward. Unfortunately, we cannot meet, physically as the committee, but I'm sure in the afternoon we'll be able to say our goodbyes as we go back to our families and have an opportunity to hug each other, to kiss each other in the cheek, and to shake hands. So with those words, have a great holiday. And I think we have come to the end of the meeting. Unless members would like also to make some statements, I will give them an opportunity to do so.
Chairperson, for me, I would say thank you very much for your guidance and your leadership in this committee, of which one, I would say I've learned a lot. Even your utterance on your open meetings and everything, I've gained a lot from you. And I would say that you're a wonderful chairperson, really. Although I know that you've got too many things on your plate, of which but you do, give time, for the committee, so that, we could have a sense of leadership coming from you. Engakusho nje kuphela nje Mhlekazi baba, siyabulela, thank you very much. Utye kahle Christmas negenge. I know that Christmas is not a Christmas, umsebenzi uyaqhubeka noma kwi-Christmas, so sideploye esicaweni ixesha elininzi, so at least soba nalo ixesha ke lamalokhuzana labantu bethu esibathandayo. Thank you very much. Ndiyabulela.
Siyabonga mama.
Thanks, Baba. Thanks, Baba. Okay, Baba. Bye.
Members, I wish now to declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you so much. We shall meet in the afternoon on the floor of Parliament. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chair.
Baba. Thank you so much.